Roland?
No, I'm okay. I just need another tooth, Hannah. I'm struggling. I had to get that other tooth taken out. I told you, didn't I?
Mm.
Okay, so that's good. So after the disclaimer. Okay, it doesn't sound like they're going to play the disclaimer. So you're going to probably want to say that right away then. Okay.
It might show up.
No, they just started a new song and we ready? We're going to go live. Okay?
Here it is. It comes.
Oh, good. They're right, sorry. I always forget it's me.
And welcome to the Rise Up. Hey, welcome everyone to the Rise Up Hour. We are back live today. I hope everyone had a good Easter week, Passover week last week, and celebrated Ramadan. It was first time in 33 years. It doesn't happen often that all of them have that celebration on a weekend. But I'm going to make out a shout out to everyone who's Orthodox. Happy Easter, everyone. Mashiach Kam, and that means Christ is risen. And then Hakam Kam means indeed he has. So I just wanted to say that to everyone for family and friends. And then I have a great guest today. His name is Christopher, and am I saying this right? Brettin, right? Correct. And then just want to mention a couple announcements. Think about recovery. Go to minnesotarecovery.org. Minnesota Recovery Connection offers free recovery navigator for peer-to-peer support. And that means like a recovery coach. It means anything that you need for that free support. And they offer telephone recovery support. They offer all recovery meetings. I love those meetings. They are offered weekly. Go to their website and look at those. And one-on-one programs. Call 612-584-4158. And then I want to talk about something that's really cool. It's featured. It's called a community screening event. And it is at the ICCM Life Center. It is presenting the screening of Tipping the Pain Scale. I've seen it. It's awesome. It's worthy watching. It's this Wednesday, 4/27 at 6 p.m. It is on our Rise Up Hour Facebook page. Check that out. It's something to be worthy of watching. It talks about recovery in general, how people have come from it, and it's just so inspiring too. And then Bridge is going to talk about Thrive Family Services right now. So go ahead, Bridge.
Okay, yes, Bridge Sky here. I love Thrive, and it is a wonderful resource for those family and friends trying to support us in recovery. And what's going on now, there is a workshop. It's called Better Boundaries, From Tough Love to Loving Well. So Thrive is co-hosting this life-changing workshop. It's virtual through Zoom. It'll start Wednesdays, April 27th, and it goes through May 18th. So you can register online. Go to their website, thrivefamilyrecoveryresources.org, and their phone number is 844-349-2911. And I love that they're doing this all about boundaries, because I didn't really understand what boundaries were. So I'm just going to read this little thing. It says, from a practical standpoint, we know that setting boundaries for ourselves is the right thing to do. But when you have a loved one struggling with substance use, it can feel impossible at times. Using evidence-based best practices, this interactive workshop will dive into the what, why, and how behind establishing and compassionately communicating boundaries in your relationship. So I'm one of those dual members. I never thought that would happen. I have a person in recovery, and then I realize I also need to help my loved ones in recovery, and I'm not exactly sure, I didn't understand those boundary things. So it's so important for everyone to get all the supports.
Yes, and I like that whole boundaries thing. And then, hey, I'm going to mention one more thing. I'm a community naloxone trainer for the Steve Brumler Hope Network. And this coming Friday, I'm going to do a training at 6 p.m. It's going to be, I'll be putting it on our Facebook page. And that's going to be at 6 p.m. so I can get a different group of people. And I'll also be, it's the Rise Up Hour Facebook group. And then I'm also going to be doing one at live at 7:30, and that's going to be at the. And I'll be doing that at my Friday night group. That's the Overcomers group, and I'm excited about doing that. So I'll be posting that on our. I'll be posting a flyer on my Facebook page and the Rise Up Hour Facebook group. And then the other thing I want to mention to you guys out there, if get a pen and paper right now, and to call with questions today. If you have a question to ask Christopher today, 651-313-5125. That's 651-313-5125. And then the text number is 763-843-4262. My text is 763-843-4262 because we will be asking him questions today live. And then today I want to also say, this is really big, you guys. Happy anniversary, Christopher. You guys, this month, we hands clapped, and people probably be sending messages of congratulations. You have 32 years of recovery this month. Am I correct?
Wow.
April 1st was my sobriety date, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So let's just talk about that. Sobriety date, recovery, wow, 32 years. And we are going to talk, if I had a chip or I had something here, basically what I'm going to say is, how did you do it? Because that's how we talk about that. And everyone, and if anyone else wants to say something or ask a question, do that. Go ahead and call in at 651-313-5125 or text a message at 763-843-4265. And hey,
4262.
4262, guys, that's just me, 4262. And real quickly, if you guys know some friends out there and you guys know Christopher, let me just mention this. Just tell your friends, WFNU.org. Just push the listen button. It's that easy because if they're not within the St. Paul area, it's going to be hard to listen to the show. So just WFNU.org. Push the listen button. It's that simple. And Christopher, I just want to start asking you this. How did you do it? And then we're going to go into your story. It's going to be all about you today because you've done 32 years, and that's what we're celebrating. And then we're going to go into some of this other stuff that you did training on. And, I've heard a little bit, but I chose not to listen to your show on KISS 101. The reason why is because I'm here with you, and I want to absorb and learn about you personally. I've talked to you a little bit, but and by the way, I have heard a little about you from others because when I said I'm having Chris Brettin on here, they said, "Oh, I know him. He's done this and he's done that, and you've trained, if I'm correct, Step 4." With 2218 as well for many years. So let's just start out with your celebration of sobriety and how did you do it?
Well, excuse me. I don't mean to sound immodest, but I didn't. I showed up hurt, dejected, and absolutely miserable. I wanted to die. And as I mentioned, my sobriety date is April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. I had no intention of staying sober. I showed up. I figured I had moved back from New York to California. I figured I'd get sober on sheer hate and willpower for 3 to 6 months. My dad would see my life had changed. He'd give me enough money to go back to New York to pick my life up. So I came in with real dishonest motives. I know nobody out there comes in with dishonest motives. We all come in with great motives. Hear that stupid statement, you need to do it for the right reasons. But no one tells you what the right reasons are. I don't care what your reasons are. We all come for because we're hurt in some way. We're going to lose our job. We're going to lose our family. We're going to lose our health. We're going to lose our life. Whatever your reasons are, just come and do the work. Your reasons will change. So I showed up with no intention of staying sober, hoping my dad would give me enough money to go back. But my dad had just completed going through treatment. So I figured I needed to go to AA because they've got this stupid book. And I could ask questions, and then I could go back and parrot the answers because I knew my dad would ask me questions. So I figured I'd show up. I'd learn a few catchphrases and some different things from the book. I'd go back, I'd repeat them to my dad. He'd go, wow, you really are changing your life. Here's some money, go back to New York. Along the way, what actually happened was I began to listen to people talk. And they would talk about not necessarily their drinking and using, because when I came in, I was 23 years old. And when I came in at 23, sitting in a room with the people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they all look really old. And now that I'm in my middle 50s, I don't think that anymore. But I couldn't relate to them. I'd never owned a home, so I didn't know what it was like to lose a home. I'd never been married. I didn't know what it was like to lose my spouse. I'd never had children. I didn't know what it was like to lose children. So all of these things they were talking about, I couldn't identify with. But somebody gave me a piece of advice when they were talking, and a lot of times because young people didn't stay around, they called me kid, which was great, rather than call me by name. So some of the people called me kid. And one guy said, kid, listen to the similarities, not the differences. And when I did that, I started hearing people talk about things on a gut level, on an emotional level. I started hearing things about, that feeling of, pity and incomprehensible demoralization, and how it really felt to just feel like you were the slime of the earth. And how it, when you would walk into a room, the door was closed, and there was a silent moment before you walked in, and as you opened the door, everyone began to laugh, and somehow intuitively you believed that they were laughing at you. Mm-hmm. Or how it felt, somebody walked into a room and they're trying to scrape you off the bottom of their shoe like it's something you stepped in out in the yard. I knew what that felt like, and all of a sudden I became very, very interested. Then he told me, when you're sitting there all by yourself, and you have this big hole in the middle of your gut that absolutely nothing can fill, and it feels like a cold January wind is blowing through that, I understand that feeling because I walked a mile in your shoes. That's when it happened.
Wow.
At that moment, I saw something in the eyes of the people that were in the rooms that I desperately had wanted all of my life. And I made a decision at that point that I wasn't going to leave until I had what they had. And that's really how it came about. So I don't take credit for it. I think that I was in the right place at the right time. I was beaten, dejected enough to have an outside force. I choose to call that force God today. But, to have something help me. And that's really kind of how it started. And it really is kind of funny because every April 1st I wake up, God kind of taps me on the forehead and says, good morning, my son. Would you like another year of sobriety? Just continue to do what you've been doing. Happy April Fool's Day. And it turned out to be the greatest April Fool's joke I ever pulled on myself.
Well, awesome. And I guess my question was, so when you went into AA, you were really struggling. Your dad said, hey, or what got you to get into a meeting? So when those who are out there, you just suddenly were in a meeting, huh?
It really was that simple. I knew that my dad would never believe that I would change my life, and that I had to go to AA to convince him that I had. Again, I had no intention to stay, but I was absolutely dejected and looking for something. Mm-hmm. I just had that emptiness in the bottom of my gut, and I needed something. And when I saw the fellowship, and people who had no idea who I was, who stuck out their hand and said, welcome, come on in and have a seat. We're glad to see you. What? You're glad to see me? My own family's not even glad to see me.
That's important.
And then there began to be a connection of the heart at a heart level with another human being, and it was very, very attractive. And so I thought, I'll stay a while. And so I tell people it doesn't matter, and I mentioned this just a few minutes ago. It doesn't matter why you walk into the rooms.
Yeah, see, I think that's great. You're saying why it doesn't matter why. Just walk into the room and check it out.
Check it out.
And people are very warm.
It may be for you. It may not be for you. There's all kinds of paths to recovery out there. I found my way in the 12 steps, rooted in Alcoholics Anonymous. I go to other programs as well. But that's where I found my base, my niche, my core group of people, and the thing that I really look forward to. So I tell all people, come on in and check it out. Give us a year. If you don't like what you find, we'll refund you your misery as you walk out the door. But if you actually do what's written in the book, very different than from what you hear in the fellowship, I promise you, your life will change dramatically, and you won't want to go back.
Yeah, and I like the way you're saying that. Give it a shot, and if you don't like the first meeting, you go to a second meeting or that group. There are other plenty of AA meetings out there. I mean, there's a universe of meetings out there. So, and I liked how I talked about you don't mind all other pathways either, because you're supportive to, in general, recovery for people that have that. Because that's where I'm a big supporter of all pathways. I walked in an AA room and I did step 1, 2, and 3, and my life changed forever. It was like ta-da! It was that moment of I don't even know how to explain it. Suddenly the band is playing, suddenly the music, the stars. And
it's like being out, we're sitting here overlooking downtown St. Paul right now. It's kind of cloudy, but picture that, and everybody can picture it. The clouds are there, and all of a sudden there's just a moment where the clouds break and the sun breaks through, and those beams of sunlight are coming down. That's what it's like.
Yes.
That really is what it's like. And for me, it's almost like hearing the angels sing on high. Oh, and all of a sudden my life began to change, and I felt better.
I love that. And so you got sober on April 1st, 1990. Wow, 32 years, and you've been continuously sober. So let's talk about what it was like and where you are now, because you were really down and out when it started all out, and you built a life. I mean, holy cow!
I've been down and out a couple of times in sobriety. The funny thing for me is having gotten sober so young in my life, I've been sober more than half of my life. So I've had a chance to make some really dumb decisions in sobriety. Mm-hmm. And know what that feels like, and deal with the thing, as we call it, life on life's terms. When I got to AA, I moved out back to California. I stayed with my sister for roughly 30 days, and then they had enough of me and they kicked me out. And so for the next 9 months, I was basically homeless. I stayed on couches, floors where I could. I rented a couple of rooms, but I couldn't pay for them. So within 30 days, I was out again. Ironically, both 2 more times in sobriety, both around 2005 and 2010, I lost everything and was homeless and had to start all over again. That's changed. I've been able to build some things back, and kind of maybe try and get into that a little bit.
Yeah. Why don't we play a song, and then we'll come back and talk about all this amazing stuff you built back up. But you guys got to listen to this. It's okay when you're in sobriety, and I'm going to say this, sobriety, recovery, we're going to go through some hard things.
Absolutely.
But it's the fact that you can understand that it's okay to go through those, because we've done that through our addictions, and when we've been going through all that, well, you're going to go through the same things, but the thing is you get to come out on top, and the fact that you didn't have to turn to something to put all your sorrows into and make it even worse.
True.
So what is the first song? It is Concrete Blonde by Joey.
Joey by Concrete Blonde.
Okay, and we'll talk about why you picked this song when we get back. This sounds interesting. And there we go. Oh, I know the song. I just don't know until I hear it. Have you seen the behind the scenes? Have you seen the recovery world, the addiction world change from?
No.
No.
Mm-mm. Oh, you mean? I thought you were talking about our website. Have I seen it change in the time I've been sober?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's worse.
In many ways, yeah. So much has come into from the outside, from therapy, from courts, from personal ideas, from pop psychology. The 12-step program of recovery is a spiritual program.
Yeah.
And it is very simple, and there's a set of instructions in the book on actually how to do it.
Yeah.
And then people will tell you stuff like, it's just suggested. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
The steps are specific.
You have to do steps.
The program is suggested. Therein lies the difference. So you get all of these things coming in, and I think that is really detracted from the actual message. AA tells in the book how, the early years, first generation, 20 years or so, recovery rates were 75% plus.
Mm-hmm.
Today they're less than 20.
Mm-hmm.
The message hasn't changed. The program hasn't changed. What's changed? We're pushing people in long before they ever need to get here. Courts are forcing people in. People are trying to help people too much. They've lost the gift of desperation in a lot of cases. and they come in and they're not ready. They're just simply not ready. And then they have people pushing at them constantly, both in the program and out. And you have all of this stuff, and they don't sit down and do this. They'll do what they hear in meetings, because some guy's, really nice. He's been around for 15, 20 years, 30 years. He's an older guy. Everyone really likes him. He's at the club all the time. Everyone knows who he is, so everyone figures he knows what he's talking about.
And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. And he doesn't go to
I've learned
meetings,
that.
and he's unhappy when you really get to know him. And, the thing, your bag, perfect, pink cloud. I'm on a pink cloud. How many times do you hear people in meetings tell people you can't stay on that pink cloud anymore?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh!
You need to basically what they're telling you is you need to come down and be miserable like the rest.
Yes, let me tell you. Do you want to hear? You want to hear the biggest complaint about me is? And she knows this.
Yes.
The fact I'm happy in my recovery.
Same.
I'm 2.5 years into it, and I praise, and I'm like, and they look at me. It's like you can't be that. They still to this day tell me there's something wrong with me.
Yeah,
You know
you're
why?
gonna get sick of it. You're gonna
Because
get
a new
burnt out.
guy like you who comes in is excited and happy and gets some old codger sitting around on his ass doing nothing, it makes him look bad.
Makes him feel
and all of a
bad.
sudden he starts feeling that, wait a minute.
And
I
I'm
should-
saying maybe you need, and what I've done to a
Yeah.
couple, I said maybe what we need to do is find why you're hurt and deal with that hurt.
1 minute.
Okay, yeah, because I deal with the trauma stuff. Because we have trauma. We have core hurts.
Sure.
Deal with that. Because society has taught us not to deal with that. Back even then. But, I'm the other, because I talk about tradition 3. Because someone said, this guy's, we don't want you, you're something else. But tradition
30
3,
seconds.
the guy that came in, saved a lot of others who are in alcoholism too. Hey guys.
Okay. Get ready.
And then, hey, tell us why you picked that song, and then we're going to talk about the great things. But I have a message from a listener out there, so go ahead.
Two reasons I picked that song. One, I think that she has just this really haunting, amazingly beautiful voice. But two, when you listen to the words, like when she says, Joey, if you're out there drunk and passed out on the floor, I'm not angry anymore. The will and love of the people trying to get us here before we ever get there, I think is really represented in that song. So it's really kind of the beginning step of how people are trying to help us. And to us, because we're so hurt, it looks like they're trying to hurt us.
Oh, wow, that's deep. Okay. And then for one of our listeners out there, I tell your guests, thank you for presenting a realistic look at recovery. Sometimes it takes more than, what did I do? Okay, it just happened to my finger pushing. It takes more than one time, and it's not easy. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it takes what it takes. For me, I won't say I was one of the lucky ones because I put a lot of work into it, but I came in and I've never left. So I don't know what it's like to relapse. But there are a lot of people out there.
And I call it reuse.
Sure. There's a lot of people out there that do relapse. People relapse. I won't say that it's a part of recovery because you hear that statement and it's really not. It's part of life. It's part of your life story. You've relapsed. Okay, get up and get back on the horse. They told us that as a kid all the time. When you fail, get back up. In fact, in the movie, one of the Christian Bale movies, Batman, he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred asks him, "Why do we fall?" And he says, "So we can learn to get back up."
Yeah, and I in my when something I don't succeed at or someone doesn't do right, it's an opportunity to do better. It's not that they failed; it's an opportunity to figure out what we had done so we could do it better, and it's a learning opportunity. Because I don't look at it as something as a failure, as you've done something wrong. It's an opportunity so we could learn how to learn from it. And some people have learned that failure is a bad thing.
Failure is just a fact.
It's
It's
just
not
fact.
good or bad. And it's like when in the 4-step in Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about that in the book. It says we're looking for our mistakes. Wow, very different. See, it's not judgmental. If I'm looking at a mistake is very easy to say, "Oh my God, I see now I'm making a mistake. How can I correct that?"
Yeah, it's an opportunity to do better.
Sure.
So, but let's go into, you said you went through some really hard times, before we went into the song, and let's kind of get back on that because I want to hear this. Now let's talk about where you're at now and some of the things, because you were in recovery for quite a while, and then you said you lost everything. And I want to explain. I went through some tough times in my recovery, even though it's been a short period. Business stuff and things you lose, and what do you do? It's like, and you have to look at the things you've learned. And what I did is I absorbed what I learned in my recovery, and said I can't let this beat me. And there's just no choice but to lift up. So let's hear about what when you went through your tough times. What is it that you did, or talk about some of your accomplishments now.
Sure. So at roughly 20 years sober, I was involved in a relationship, and I came home one day and she was gone. The relationship had been deteriorating and she was gone. We lived in a beautiful home that had been built in 1907. I was 8 blocks out my front door to the East Beach at Lake Calhoun. For those who don't know the area, it's kind of a nicer area.
Oh, really nice.
And I have this beautiful house. I've done all of this work, and somebody walked by, and I heard them talking about this house on the hill, how the people living there, all the work they've done, they must really have everything in life that they've ever wanted. And in that moment, it was a perfect reflection of my life. From the outside looking in, it looked like I had everything that I ever wanted, but inside, just like that home, I was completely empty. Mm. And I had stopped going to AA for a while. It's a very long story. Somebody had plotted my murder, and some other things happened. So I got really angry once again with God, and I said, I'll show you, I'll hurt me, and I stopped going to AA for a while. And then when my son's mom left, and she took her 2 daughters who were like my own children and my son.
Devastating.
And I was devastated. And I thought, if I could just get back to Alcoholics Anonymous and do what they tell me to do in the book, I'll be okay. And somebody had told me about 2218, so I went to an old mansion over in Minneapolis. I went driving around, I found it, and I started attending meetings. And while I was attending meetings there's a guy, his name was Dave. Every club's got a guy like Dave. Older guy, long, stringy, greasy hair, smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day, gruff-sounding voice, absolutely miserable. And he looked at me and says, "You need to go to this 4-step workshop to get past your anger." and I thought, you miserable old prick, maybe you should go yourself. But I went to the workshop, and a guy named Rick and Bob were running the workshop at that time. They had been running it for about 20 years at that point. And Rick became my sponsor, and he was talking about how people looking in on his life, if they could see from their smaller perspectives what he could see from his life about his larger perspective, they would see that things aren't happening like they think they are. And in that moment, I got a voice I've heard all in my head all of my life. It said, your life is not happening like you think it is. And I sat down and I went through this workshop at 2218. It's a 3rd and 4-step workshop. It's called Buy the Book 4-step workshop. And I went through, and we went through all of chapter 5 in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Chapter 5 is how it works, because that's really how the entire program, the basis of how it all works. And there was a lot of things I read in there and had heard in meetings that were very contradictory to what it actually said in the book when I followed the directions. And I followed those directions in steps 3 and 4, and it completely changed my life. And I want to say something here. When I walked into AA, I walked in, I saw all the steps listed on the wall, right? You know, those dumb steps. When you're new, you look at the dumb steps. And, step 1, I might be alcoholic, but my life isn't unmanageable. It's bad circumstances. If anybody would just help me out and stop trying to screw me over, life would work out fine. And step 2 mentions sanity, and I thought, well, clearly my mental prowess is great. I'm not insane. Step 2 didn't apply. Step 3 mentions God. I wanted nothing to do with God, so step 3 didn't apply. Step 4 talks about, we're going to write this moral inventory of all the crap we've done in our life and feel better. I thought, there's no way I'm doing that. Step 5 says, that we're going to talk with our sponsors and admit these things. And 5 for me, growing up Catholic, looked like confession. So I thought I'd walk in, cross myself, bless me, sponsor. I've been a bad guy. He'd give me, go clean some ashtrays and make some coffee. You'll feel better. So that was 5. And 6 and 7 mentions, our character defects. My parents were from small towns. It was bad breeding stock. It wasn't my problem. So 6 and 7 didn't apply. Steps 8 and 9 were that I was going to go and make amends to you for all of the horrible things I've done, but I thought the world has treated me far worse than I've ever treated it. 8 and 9, I'm not doing that. Step 4 is called a personal inventory in the book. So 10 says continue to take personal inventory. Well, I wasn't interested in doing it the first time. I'm not going to do it the second time in step 10. Step 4 also talks about growing this experience of God. Step 11 mentioned that again. I thought, I'm not doing that. And 12 mentioned that we'll go out and talk to people. And I loved speech class in high school and theater and things like that. So I thought I could do that. So, there's my program, steps 5 and 12. Let's get the healing on and move on. And that's the way that I went through. And I listened to people talking all the time about this stuff. And it didn't make any sense. And one of the things I heard people talking about was the fourth step. And in chapter 5, it talks about step 3 being the keystone. In other words, the most important idea to the new and triumphant arch to freedom, which will pass. And based on what I read, this is my opinion. I want to be very clear.
It's an opinion. Yep, we're allowed to have our opinions.
That step 4 then would have to be the foundation, because in step 5 we're revealing the things we found in step 4. In step 6 and 7 we're asking and then becoming ready to have the objectionable things we found in 4 removed. Step 8 is the list we made when we did step 4. Step 9 are the amends we made for the objectionable things we found we did in step 4. Step 10, as I mentioned, says continue to do personal inventory. So what it really says is continue to do 4 for the rest of my life. 11 is improving my conscious contact with God. That step 4 initiates. And then 12 says having had a spiritual awakening is the result of doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So when I did that, my life changed. And I'll give you a background real quick. So I grew up in an alcoholic home with a lot of physical abuse. Mm-hmm. And my dad, when he was a little boy, was probably about 6 years of age. And one summer day, he forgot to give the dog fresh water. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather decided to teach him a lesson the next day. He took him outside and he took him into the garage. Took a swing set chain. And he bolted it to my dad's ankle, and he took him out and he chained him to a tree. And then he said he had to stay there for the next 3 days without food or water so he'd understand how a dog would feel, and that he wouldn't do that again. He's out chained to the tree and trying to keep himself shaded, and kids would come by in the little towns, come and play, and he couldn't go anywhere. Sometimes kids are mean. Mm-hmm. So they stood at the other side of the alleyway and they picked up rocks. And they began pelting my dad with rocks. And eventually he got up and he ran out, hit the end of that chain, and he fell on his face just like a dog. And those are the types of experiences that my dad brought into his life. Now, we lived here in St. Paul, and we moved away when I was about 4. My dad took a transfer, and we moved out to New Jersey, a little town called Cherry Hill, right across the river from Philadelphia. And while we were out there, the second spring, so I was probably a little over 5 years of age, my mom would go grocery shopping on Saturday, and usually took us with us. But that Saturday, she left us behind with my dad, and we wanted to go out and play, and he said, just don't get wet. Well, I understand. I'm supposed to stay dry. So how do you do that, right? You put on your snow pants and your jacket and your boots and your mittens, and you stay dry. The things that are supposed to get wet and protect you do. We went out, we played, we came back in. I'm undressing by the kitchen door. My dad looks up from the kitchen table and he says, I told you, you little not to get wet, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And he picked me up and he slapped me 4 or 5 times across the face, and he body slammed me on the kitchen floor. As my head banged off the floor and I peed my pants one more time, I'm thinking, what did I do? I'm dry. Why do you treat me this way? And I'm terrified. Mm-hmm. And I have hundreds of experiences like that in my life. And I walk into Alcoholics Anonymous and I hear people talking about step 4, and they tell me I'm supposed to look for my part to get past my anger. This is the fellowship telling me to look for my part. Well, what was my part?
You didn't drink.
I couldn't find one either. So here's what I did. With a wink and a nod, I said, Dad, I'll forgive you. I'll be the bigger man. That is not forgiveness. That is pardoning. Mm-hmm. Like an illegal pardon is saying, you're still guilty, but we're going to pretend to look the other way. Mm-hmm. There's a series on YouTube, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the guy in it said he studied Aramaic. It was the language of historical Jesus.
Yes.
And he said that in Aramaic, this is him reporting that, in Aramaic, the word forgive literally means to change your mind, to see it differently. Well, that's very different than pardoning. If you're seeing it differently versus saying you're still guilty. So when I showed up at the workshop, I had this stuff in my head. And I got that idea, your life isn't happening like you think it is. And I sat down and I began writing inventory exactly the way that it's laid out in chapter 5. Very different from what you'll hear in the program. In the book, it doesn't say we're looking for our part. It says we're putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. In fact, it says it twice in the same paragraph. Well, if you're not looking at anybody else, there is no part. And what I found for me was that in looking for a part, I presumed that there was another part, and therefore I continued to stay angry because the other person shared some of the guilt and some of the blame. And when I was finally free from that, on the bottom of page 66 in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, this is our course. We realize that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Now, if you've been raped, molested, beaten, or had something god-awful happen to you, that almost sounds like we're going to forgive crappy behavior and feel better. But that's not what it says. The very next thing it says on the top of page 67 is this. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Mm-hmm. I had read that 100 times and I missed that. But in that moment, I heard that. I was an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a home with a lot of physical abuse. My dad grew up in a home with a lot of physical abuse. Mm-hmm. If I was spiritually sick and needed love and forgiveness, maybe my dad needed love and forgiveness too and wasn't the monster that I thought that he was. And in that moment, that resentment I had for my dad blew out, and it's never come back. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not about saying what my dad did to me is okay, because it absolutely is not okay.
It's not okay, yes.
It's not. But it is about saying, had he been in his loving and right spiritual mind, there's no way he could have treated another human being that way, much less his own child.
And I understand that. That's a very good way. Wow, such a deep moment. We're going to go on a song, but anyone have questions? 763-843-4262 or call in live at 651-313-5125. We're going to go into some songs, and we'll come back with such a deep, emotional, this is deep. So, what song? It's Social Distortion by Ball and Chain. Wow. Again, that's something message. Someone, I think the light blinked, we didn't see it.
If you see this white light flash...
I didn't see it flash.
No, I don't think so. So, this reminds me, Jason and I, we do...
I don't know if you could hear the other one because I had the music up. But, Scott can explain to you who I am. Just another day sober.
It's my first sponsor.
I heard you talk about steps 1, 2, and 3, and they la 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 la. How about the freedom steps 4 through 9? I'd like to hear you talk about those a little more.
Well, stay tuned, Tom.
Thanks.
Do you want us to play that? Or do you want to just say that his sponsor called it?
That's my first sponsor from California.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
What do you want to do with that?
Thanks. Did they leave him? He said someone left this message, so...
No, listen. Do you want to just play that on air?
Yeah.
Or do you feel comfortable with that? Or do you want to just... He could just
Whatever
wrap
you want.
up what he
Whatever
said.
you want's fine.
Yeah. Whatever you want to do, I'm okay.
Yeah, play it on air. So turn your volume up, but just put it up to your mic.
Yep. And,
Have it ready.
Or you can just say that, it
so
turns out we had his first sponsor call in and mention,
Yes,
we talked
the
about
call.
one, but how about the freedom steps?
Oh, yeah, you could just say that.
Yeah, thanks.
You could say, so it turns out your first sponsor.
Sorry, missed the call, thanks.
So just say,
Let's tell him Phil that.
for the show,
Yeah.
for Chris, say, so we got a message from your first sponsor, though, if you want to tap
I didn't
into
see that. Did you?
the next
No,
steps.
I did.
I think that should be like towards us somewhere.
I'll mention it to Mike and Phil.
That we can't
We're
do.
having other technical difficulties, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Because wouldn't we see that? I mean, somehow?
He would see it, yes.
I did not see it flash at all.
Yeah, when I was on it, it worked. 'Cause I saw it flash.
I'm sure it didn't work. I'm telling you, man, I'm sure. You can send him a message after to us. Oh, people are listening?
People are always listening, man.
Sabrina listens while she's on doing her MTC, riding the bus.
Yeah, a lot of people just listened to Steve listening and...
Oh my God, my neck
We
hurts
got
so bad
lights.
today. Oh, so bad today, my right side.
So just so we have enough time, I'm going to go to your next song. So have a talk about the two songs.
You're like a two.
Have a talk to the two songs. Talk about your two songs quick, and then we can respond to his message.
If you want to
That's
cut one,
okay.
if you want to cut one of the songs out, that's fine too.
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
Can we cut one?
It's up to him.
Yeah, can we?
Let's cut the third song then.
So let's just play this one and then we'll play another one. And
Okay.
okay.
So what do you want to be your final song? Louis Armstrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're gonna have to have you back. He's really good. I'm gonna have to take that workshop actually.
So we do a back to basics workshop. Me and Jason, which we're going to ask Chris to come with us to do it at Fridley. It is based on the way they did it in the 1940s.
Oh, cool.
When it was simplified, when it was what it was meant to be.
And I like the step forward because I speak some Aramaic because I'm Jordanian, Eastern Orthodox, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
Christian descent, but because it's not about. Cause that's where my start because I was abused as well. We can't sit there and say, "Oh, because we didn't do anything." We really did not do anything, especially when you get thrown across the room. I understand that. Very similar. Trust me. It's like, huh? Or, hey, Dad, will you play with me? Smack, smack, smack. Like, I just asked you to play with me, and you smacked across my face.
30 seconds.
Hard. And look, you have a beautiful relationship with your dad, too, in the end, right?
I did, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Ready? Ready?
And tell us about that song real quickly, Christopher.
That song came out when I was, I think, probably within my first year of sobriety. It's by Social Distortion. It's called Ball and Chain. And it really is about that feeling of destitution, of just wanting to have that ball and chain of addiction taken away from you.
Wow. Okay. Cool. And then, hey, I'm gonna try to play it on the air if you don't mind.
Sure, go
ahead. Someone sent in a message, and we missed the light blinking. There may be a technical difficulty. Of course, whenever I'm here, that happens. But I'm gonna play it.
I don't know if you could hear the other one because I had the music up. But, Scott can explain to you who I am.
That's my first sponsor from California.
But I heard you talk about steps 1, 2, and 3, and the la 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 la. How about the freedom steps 4 through 9? I'd like to hear you talk about those a little more. Thanks.
Well, Tom, patience is a virtue, and if you hang on, you'll get to hear the rest of that.
So what are the freedom steps? I've heard.
Well, what he's talking about is steps 4 through steps 9, where we're really kind of looking at ourselves and cleaning up our mess. Step 4 made a personal inventory. Step 5 admitted to God, to ourselves, and other human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6 and 7, again, where we're becoming ready to have those things removed from us. And steps 8, 9 are the amends step, where we go out and we clean up our mess. And it really is freedom. It sounds horrible when you first hear about it, but it actually is absolute freedom. And it did. It absolutely freed me up. So let's go back here real quick, though, to what I'm talking about with the 4-step and how I found freedom. Now, in doing that, some remarkable things happened. See, I hated every boss I had because they all reminded me of my dad. So I would get fired every 12 to 18 months, like clockwork. I would get fired. So when I did that here now 12 years ago, in fact, in the last 12 years, I've been fired twice, and to me, that looks like the perfect picture of mental health. I've been at my last job now for over 5 years, and I love working there. I really enjoy it. So I healed all the relationships with my boss by looking at my dad. That wasn't intended. By healing the relationship with my dad, I gave my dad and my son a new relationship, because the man I hated with every fiber of my being, there's no way I would have let him spend time with his own grandson. And here about 8-9 years ago, he gave my son a set of electric trains for Christmas. And I was able to give them the gift to sit by themselves downstairs and play with the electric trains, just like I did when I was little with my dad.
So your dad, let's talk about this. I want listeners to be hearing this part. So you have a relationship with your dad? Or
I still do.
So you guys actually were able to get beyond all that?
Sure. So my dad was diagnosed here a while back with COPD.
Okay.
And lung disorder, had some things going on. And he wound up in the hospital in 2016, right before Christmas. And I talked to the doctors because I studied radiation medicine, and I said, I think there's something more going on. Let's take some more tests. They did. And it turned out he had stage 4 lung and liver cancer. And so I went through 18 rounds of chemotherapy with him at the beginning of 2017. And they didn't think he would live, but a miracle happened and he got better. And the next year in August 2018, the cancer came back, and we went through another 18 rounds of chemotherapy, and he got better again. And in 2019, in August, one more time, the cancer came back, and he started. But physically, he couldn't handle it. And in October of 2019, he went to a hospice care facility, and I was talking with the nurse, and told him that he's having a really good day, but that in 2 days, come Thursday, that he'll go downhill very, very quickly because things have not been going well.
Okay.
And she looked at me strange. She said, well, why Thursday? I said, because Thursday is my birthday. And there's no way he'll leave this earth before he gets time to spend it with me one last time.
Oh.
And that day came, and that Sunday, where my dad was an avid baseball fan, and we were listening to the World Series, and he'd fallen asleep. And I was holding his hand, and it was about 10:15. I kissed his forehead, and I said, Dad, I need to leave. I'll be back tomorrow. I love you. And he kind of opened his eyes. He said, I love you too. And those were the last words I ever heard from my dad.
Oh.
The next morning, he fell into a coma, and then 2 days later, he passed away. But what a beautiful gift that I had been given, that I got a chance to spend 3 years with the man that I absolutely hated with every fiber of my being, from a place of love and joy, rather than some obligatory sense of duty, because I was his oldest child and his only son. In moments that had happened, I'll tell you something else that happened. So in doing that with my dad, he gave me a birthday card here about 8 years ago now. And in the card he wrote, I am very proud of you. I am proud of the son that you are, the man that you have become, and the father that you are to your son. I love you. For 45 years at that point, I had searched for that man to say those words to me, and I was out there hammering on hating him. I never got what I wanted. But when I actually cleared the wreckage out of the way in the 4th step and found forgiveness for him in that moment, I found forgiveness for myself. And then I got exactly what I wanted. I got those words from my dad, but here was the beautiful thing. I had healed in a spiritual direction, north and south, and I no longer needed validation out in the everyday world. It was nice to hear, but I no longer needed it. Something else happened. In 2015, my dad and I bought a house together, and he came to live with me. Who would have ever thought that would have happened at some point? I certainly didn't. So I have this beautiful gift, and as a result of doing that, I get a new childhood through my son's eyes every time I'm with him. And my son, when he was little, he'd be playing games, and he'd stop and he'd go, Dad, I like you.
Oh.
You're a really good dad. I love you forever, all the way to the moon and back, right, Dad? Yeah. Why? Because I took a story that I was certain that I was right about, that everyone in the world told me I was right about, that I was justified in my anger, and I should hate my dad for it. And I said, I can't stand this. This is killing me. I need to see this differently. And literally in 10 minutes of writing, God helped me see it differently, and it changed my entire life. And it changed everything, the way that I feel, the way that I act, the way I interact with the world. We were talking in the break, and we were talking about that idea of the pink cloud. When you're new and you come in and you're excited, and people look at you, and those old timers say, "You're on that pink cloud. You can't stay up there forever." Why not? Why can't I stay up here forever? I can be perfectly happy on my pink cloud with my neurosis intact, and you know what? I'm not coming down. I like it up here.
And I agree with that. You can be as happy as you want in recovery. And hey, Christopher, I got another message for you. Christopher, so proud of you. Congratulations on 32 years. Buffalo, New York misses you, but you are exactly where you are meant to be. Love you, Don. So people all over the country are listening to you. That's amazing. And you know what? You bring a ray of light in all this. I'm just going to say this. The way you're talking about this with recovery base and the way you're talking about the step, I like how your approach is. It's very different.
It's not actually different, because I'm only telling you what the book
truth
says.
yeah,
it's right in the book. But the problem is we go to meetings and people bastardize and say all this stuff as their opinion presented as fact, and then people who are new misunderstand, mishear, and get the program wrong,
and then walk away
miserable.
and walk away being miserable,
Absolutely.
and especially for people. I'm going to say this, especially for people who have trauma. When you're telling them that you have to forgive, or you're going to be miserable, and you got to let them go, and that you did something, because I dealt with someone who's told someone who was abused that. You may have done something. You just have to say you're sorry for allowing the abuse to happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're telling the person that they allowed the abuse to happen. So yes, but the approach you're doing is following what the book is saying, the original way it was done.
Sure. It's a spiritual. It's an idea of spiritual healing rather than psychological healing.
And I like that. And so I just want to say we're going to play the last song, and we only played 3 songs today because this has been so absorbent. And we will have you back. I'm just going to tell you that, Christopher, because you are pretty amazing. So go ahead.
Last song?
Last song is what?
Louis Armstrong.
What a wonderful world.
What a wonderful world. Oh, great. And then what is it you want to show me? Say.
I told you I would bring a poem for you.
Yes. Oh, and you got your poem.
Let's do that right away when we come back. And then we'll still have, we'll only have 5 minutes, so let do the poem first. So
Yep.
get that in. So that could be enough time.
Sure, if you want me to do it, I'll do it.
What?
This poem.
Man, he's going to do the poem. If you look over, I don't care.
Okay, let's say
Didn't you hear that, Phil? No.
Do the poem.
Oh, people are sending messages? Oh, no. I don't know.
No.
I get confused.
So
We got viewers.
Dawn from Buffalo is one of my friends.
Yeah, who's that?
Close friend of mine when I lived in Buffalo. I lived in Buffalo, New York, right before I moved to California to get sober.
Uh-huh.
And so she was one of my friends that was with me right at the end of where my whole world just collapsed.
Wow. Okay.
And I reconnected through Facebook with her.
Yes. That's awesome.
Pretty amazing. I'm usually more bubbly, but today my head's like...
Oh, you're plenty bubbly.
I feel kind of bubbly today. Oh. Yeah, Pink Cloud actually, that is a thing. Someone took Pink Cloud, who was supposed to be a recovery person, as a gay thing.
Who cares?
Well, yeah, I don't know why, but and there's another association or another organization called Pink Cloud, and there's something different. So people it's like an actual app, so it gets confused.
Yeah,
I mean, with
or
with the politicization in the world, I can understand where somebody looked at that and go, "Wait a minute, you're bringing that into an AA meeting." I kind of get it.
But then, do you know where the word relapse came from? It actually came from AA, because of meaning the reuse. So relapse was created from the foundation of AA. Whoa.
There you go.
Over there. We still got a few minutes, right?
We got 4 minutes.
Okay, cool. Hey, and why did you pick that song, Christopher?
Because today, in sobriety, it actually is a wonderful world. I have a beautiful son who's 13. I have a lovely fiance now today. We have this gorgeous little 16-year-old girl, a 16-month-old girl, and life is just wonderful.
Wait, 16-month-old girl?
16-month-old little girl.
Yeah,
Oh, congratulations! Look at you! Holy crap.
It just means everything still works on me. And that
Yes, but it's just good to hear that your life is going so well. And I just want to say thank you so much. And then you also got a special poem that you wrote, right?
I did. This happens to be Poetry Month, and you mentioned that here a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, because
we had another guest on who did some poetry, and I said, well, in honor of Poetry Month, I will bring you an original poem that I wrote as part of my healing.
Oh, cool.
So it's real quick. Set it up. It's called A Day in My Life. This happened to me when I was about 3 years of age. So I wrote about that. So it says, we were just little boys playing as little boys do. First I would jump, then so would you. We were having such fun playing, just we two. Running to the top of the hill, who'd jump next, me or you? You were a little faster, so this time you'd go first, thinking only of fun, not ready for the worst. I stood there and smiled on that bright sunny day. Then something went wrong. As you landed, the ground gave way. I watched you slide to the bottom of the hill, quickly covered in a landslide of rock, sand, and fill. I cried out your name, tried catching you as you go, but I was too young, too slow. I was grabbed by the arm and quickly pulled away, scolded severely for playing where we weren't supposed to play. I stood there and watched as men began to search, quickly shuffling around and undigging the earth. They searched and searched, then an ambulance arrived. Finally they found you, and I knew you'd survive. I asked my mother as we walked away if God would make you better and if tomorrow we could play. Later in the darkness, as I lie in my bed, "Better day tomorrow" echoed in my head. Then in came my dad, and he sat by my side. He put his hand on my leg, and he told me you died. He told me of heaven, and that you'd gone there to stay, so that when tomorrow came, you and I could not play. I never saw your family much after that day. A short time later, we all moved away. It's 23 years later, and today I finally cried for a boy named Johnny, my friend who died. So I say now, goodbye, my little friend. I wish you were here, and too soon did it end. I have never forgot you, and all my love I send. And wherever you are, someday we'll play again. I say that because to this day, when I practice this program and interact with other people at a heart level, I get to play every day with other human beings and other alcoholics. And I get the joy of living my life over again with my son and my daughter in the way that it is. So there's my original poem that happened. In fact, that happened right here in St. Paul, right up here off of 94 and 280 when I was a little boy. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
1 minute.
1 minute. And
It's
that left me speechless. Okay, everyone. Hello. And just a couple of quick announcements. Christopher, we are going to have you back again, but I just want to take a quick moment and say blessings and blessings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And am I correct? 2218 is still teaching step
2218 every Wednesday night at 6:30. Jesse and Rick do the 4-step workshop. You don't have to start at it from the beginning. It roughly goes 7 weeks and starts over again. You can join it at any time, and they'll catch you up.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to make this announcement. Remember, next Friday at 6 p.m. Via Zoom. You'll find it on the Rise Up Hour. I'm doing a naloxone training, and then I'm doing one in person at High Praise Ministries at 7:30. All are welcome to join. It's an overcomers group, and that's AA-based meeting, faith-based. And you guys, just enjoy your week. Happy Easter for Orthodox. Wish peace across the world, and you guys, I just want to say this. Next week, we'll announce who our guest is going to be, and just enjoy this beautiful, windy day, and the weather is going to keep getting better. Minnesota is just a little off this week, and if you need any support services, connect with Minnesota Recovery Connection. They can get you a recovery coach. It costs nothing to you. No matter how you're feeling, they'll give you some support, so reach out to someone.
Christopher.
Thank you, everyone.
Christopher, last name again.
Brettin.
I know, I just keep getting that mixed up. What an amazing guest. Wow. I'm going to give you a hug, by the way.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah.
I wish we had had more time.
I know. It just goes by.
Yeah, we didn't even play many songs. This is the first time I've done 3 songs. Ever.
Sorry, I spoke too much.
No, it was very eloquent.
Sorry, not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
That was fantastic. All right, you guys want to go out there too? I'll do pictures.
Yes.
While this uploads, exports.
I'm going to use the restroom real quickly.
Sure.
All right. Thanks for watching. It's aabythebook.org, isn't it?
Correct.
Where you could go listen to the recordings
Yep.
and stuff. So, okay. Bye, everybody. And
Holy crap.
broadcast. What's up?